You are 17, standing in the late summer heat of 1973, and the air around you carries the mixed scent of cut grass, warm asphalt, and the faint trace of burning leaves drifting from a neighbor's yard. The entire town has gathered on the school lawn, their voices swelling and dipping like the sound of a distant river, and in front of you sits the wooden chest that everyone calls the time capsule. Your classmates laugh and push at one another as they line up, each of them holding something they think represents their lives: a baseball card bent at the edges, a glossy magazine cut out of a rising rock star, a cassette tape wrapped in scribbled lyrics, a faded Polaroid of a first car parked outside the diner. To them this is a game, a joke to be laughed at when they are older. But your hands tremble as you hold the folded sheet of paper you wrote late at night, under the dim bulb in your room, when the house was silent and only the crickets outside sang their endless song. On that page is not a memento, not a silly token, but a letter, your letter. Words scrawled in ink about the things you have seen but were told not to mention, about how the mayor's money seems to stretch further than it should, about how the sheriff's silence has been bought too many times, about how land that once belonged to hard-working families now changes hands in shadowed deals that no one dares to question aloud. You are only 17, but you already know that truth is heavier than any coin or photograph, and you fold that truth into the capsule because you believe that time itself will protect it. You imagine someone in the distant year of 1993 opening this chest, unfolding your letter, and reading words that will finally be impossible to bury, because 20 years of silence will have made them sacred. The chest is lowered into the earth by two men with shovels, the dirt falling in steady rhythms, covering wood with soil, until it disappears completely. Around you, people clap, the principal speaks of legacy, the mayor smiles for photographs, and your classmates scatter back toward the gymnasium where sodas and cookies wait. But you linger, staring at the fresh mound of earth, feeling a strange mixture of relief and fear wash over you, relief because your truth is safe, fear because you wonder if the ground itself can be bribed, if secrets can rot even when buried deep. As you walk away, you tell yourself that in 20 years the truth will rise. That the town will have no choice but to listen. That the letter you wrote in your own uneven handwriting will finally have a voice. But deep down, you already suspect, some people will never let the ground give back what it swallows. You arrive back in town on a bus that smells faintly of diesel and worn upholstery, the kind of smell that seeps into your clothes and lingers long after the ride is over. The windows rattle as the vehicle slows down, and when you step onto the cracked pavement of the station, the first thing that strikes you is how little the place has changed. The same painted sign hangs above the diner across the street, its red letters faded but still readable. The same telephone booth leans slightly at the edge of the lot, and the same silence greets you, that peculiar silence of a small town where every sound seems to echo louder than it should. You are 37 now, but the weight of being 17 never truly left, especially when it comes to this town. The air tastes of summer dust, and for a moment you wonder why you even came back. You tell yourself it is curiosity, maybe nostalgia, but deep inside you know the truth. You came because today they will open the capsule. The one you watched being buried 20 years ago. The one that swallowed your letter whole. As you walk down Main Street, you notice the decorations strung across lampposts, faded paper banners that read, Class of 73, 20 years of memories. Someone has tied balloons to the railings outside the school, though in the heavy August heat they look deflated already, sagging against one another like tired faces. The sidewalks are crowded, children darting between adults, older townsfolk dressed in their Sunday best even though it's Thursday, and the hum of conversations drifts over like a swarm of bees. You blend into the crowd, but your eyes scan everything. The courthouse steps where the mayor once posed proudly, the sheriff's office with its peeling paint, the old gas station where your father used to stop after long shifts. Memories press in from all directions, memories that refuse to stay quiet. You think of the letter, folded carefully in your hands that day in 1973, words carved out of your own fear and anger. You think of how you watched the dirt cover the chest, and how you waited, certain that truth had simply gone underground, biding its time. The school lawn is crowded when you arrive. A wooden stage has been set up, complete with a microphone that screeches feedback before settling into silence. The principal from your days is long gone, replaced by a younger man in a gray suit who smiles nervously as he adjusts his tie. Beside him stands the mayor, older now, but still with that same polished grin, the kind that hides more than it shows. And just off to the side, watching the crowd with narrowed eyes, is the sheriff. His hair has gone gray at the temples, his posture heavier, but his presence is no less sharp. You feel your stomach tighten. The ceremony begins with speeches, words about legacy, about remembering who we were and who we have become, about how the future is built on the shoulders of the past. They talk of pride, of community, of honesty as if it has always been the cornerstone of this town. You listen, but your gaze keeps sliding back to the small square of dirt that has been marked off with rope, the spot where the capsule waits beneath the soil. Finally, two men step forward with shovels. The crowd leans in, some raising cameras, others holding their children up to see better. You feel your pulse quicken as each scoop of dirt is lifted away, the earthy scent rising, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. Then the shovels hit nothing. The men dig deeper, exchanging puzzled looks, their shovels clinking against each other as the hole widens. The crowd grows restless. Murmurs ripple outward, confusion spreading like smoke. The men dig faster now, sweat beading on their foreheads, but still there is nothing. Only soil. Only emptiness. A child asks loudly, "Where's the box?" And laughter breaks out, nervous, unsure, covering fear with humor. Someone mutters that it must be a prank, that maybe it was never real, that kids probably moved it years ago. The mayor clears his throat, trying to turn the moment into another joke, saying something about, "Maybe the future just couldn't wait for us." But you don't laugh. Because you know what should be there. You remember the weight of that letter in your hands, the scrape of the wooden lid as it closed, the sound of dirt falling like muted applause. You remember watching it vanish into the ground. And now, 20 years later, the earth is silent, and the truth you buried has been stolen. The murmurs swell into a low roar as the men keep digging, their shovels striking soil that offers no resistance, no sound of wood or metal beneath. The principal leans over, whispering something frantically to the mayor, who only shakes his head and keeps smiling, though the corners of his mouth twitch as though the mask is slipping. The sheriff steps forward at last, raising a hand for calm, his voice deep and commanding as he says that sometimes things are not what we expect, that time has a way of playing tricks. The crowd chuckles nervously, but the unease lingers like humidity in the air. You stand still, watching, your heart heavy with the realization that this isn't chance, this isn't some childish prank. You see it in the way the sheriff avoids looking at the hole, in the way the mayor's eyes dart to the reporters with their notepads poised, in the way the stage lights glint against the sweat on the younger principal's forehead. They knew. Or at least, some of them did. A woman beside you whispers to her husband that she remembers the day the capsule was buried, remembers her brother lowering his toy car into the box, remembers the way the dirt smelled just like this, damp and raw. Her husband shushes her quickly, telling her it's better not to talk about such things in public. Better not to talk. The phrase clings to you like a shadow. Children lose interest and run toward the lemonade stand. Older townsfolk mutter that they should have known, that kids never take anything seriously. The principal finally announces that the capsule must have been misplaced, maybe relocated during landscaping, and they'll look into it. The mayor claps his hands, insisting everyone return to the gymnasium for refreshments, promising that history has a way of surprising us. The crowd disperses, their disappointment hidden behind polite laughter, their questions drowned out by the music spilling from loudspeakers. But you remain by the rope, staring into the pit of loose dirt, feeling the pull of 20 years collapse into this one moment. You know the capsule wasn't lost. It was taken. And as you turn to leave, you catch sight of someone watching you. An old man, standing near the edge of the crowd, his face lined like cracked leather, his eyes sharp despite the years. He doesn't smile, doesn't join the chatter or laughter. He only nods, once, almost imperceptibly, as though acknowledging that you, and you alone, understand what this moment truly means. Before you can move toward him, he slips into the crowd, vanishing into the swell of people heading for the gymnasium doors. The sheriff's voice booms again, calling for order, reminding everyone to celebrate rather than dwell on disappointment. But his eyes sweep across the lawn, and for a moment they lock onto yours. His stare is steady, unblinking, carrying a weight that presses against your chest. It feels less like a warning and more like a reminder that some things in this town are not meant to be unearthed. You turn away, but the emptiness of the ground follows you, echoing in your mind, whispering the truth you already know: the capsule did not disappear. It was buried a second time, not in soil but in silence, hidden by hands that feared what you placed inside. And somewhere in this town, that letter still waits. The crowd shuffles into the school gymnasium, the air heavy with the mingled scents of lemonade and overcooked hot dogs, and the laughter of children bounces against the cinder-block walls like echoes from another time. You step inside, but you feel like an intruder at a reunion you were never meant to attend, like the walls themselves have aged while keeping secrets no one wants to share. Tables are lined with trays of cookies and paper cups, balloons sag in the corners, and a banner stretches overhead, celebrating the class of '73. People talk about football seasons long past, about who married whom, about which stores closed and which survived. Their voices are cheerful, but under the cheerfulness lies a careful restraint, as though everyone is speaking just enough, but not too much. You move slowly through the crowd, searching for the man who nodded at you outside. You scan every corner, every face, but he's gone, dissolved into the fabric of the town, as if he had never been there at all. Instead, you notice the sheriff standing by the punch bowl, his badge catching the gymnasium lights, his smile too sharp for the words he speaks. He shakes hands, laughs at jokes, but every few moments his gaze sweeps the room, searching, watching, measuring. You avoid his eyes and drift toward a group of older women who are reminiscing about the original burial ceremony. One of them recalls how her daughter dropped in a small photograph. Another remembers her nephew placing a coin. They all laugh when one of them says, "Maybe the ground swallowed it whole, like the earth knew it didn't want to let go." Their laughter is light, but the way they avoid looking at you tells you they remember more than they admit. Later, as the crowd thins and the music fades, you step outside into the cooling dusk. The cicadas hum in the trees, and the sky above the school glows with the last embers of sunset. You walk across the empty lawn, stopping by the pit where the capsule should have been. The dirt has already been smoothed over, as though erasing the evidence could erase the memory. The silence here feels heavier than inside the gymnasium. You kneel down, press your palm against the soil, and close your eyes. For a moment you almost imagine you can hear your own younger voice whispering from beneath the earth, the ink of that letter still breathing in the dark. But when you open your eyes, you're no longer alone. An old teacher, one you almost didn't recognize, stands a few yards away, his posture bent but his eyes sharp with something urgent. He steps closer, his shoes crunching on the gravel path, and his voice is low when he speaks, almost as if he is afraid of the air carrying his words too far. "Your father wasn't wrong," he says. "What he told you about the letter, about what it meant, they couldn't let it surface." Your throat tightens. You want to ask him more, but before you can form the words, the gym doors open again and laughter spills out, breaking the moment. The teacher steps back, glancing toward the sound, and when his eyes return to yours, they are filled with something like fear, or regret. He lowers his voice even further. "Meet me tomorrow. The library. There are things you need to see before it's too late." And just like that, he turns away, his figure swallowed by the shadows of the trees, leaving you alone beside the smooth earth, your pulse hammering with the weight of words that sound more like a warning than an invitation. Morning arrives with a thin veil of mist over the town, the kind that clings to the streets, and makes everything feel quieter than usual, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You walk the familiar road toward the library, each step carrying you deeper into a silence that seems to stretch between the houses, across the fields, through the very air. The library stands at the end of Main Street, its brick walls darkened by time, its windows cloudy with dust that filters the morning light into muted shades of gold. You push open the heavy wooden door, and the creak it gives is so loud in the stillness that it feels almost like a protest. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of old paper and varnished wood. Rows of shelves rise around you like guardians of forgotten years, and the silence here is not just quiet, it is expectant, as though the very books lean forward to listen. The librarian, a woman with silver hair pinned in a tight bun, greets you with a polite nod but no questions, as if she has long ago learned not to ask why anyone would come searching among the past. You make your way toward the archive room, where bound volumes of newspapers sit stacked in heavy cloth covers, their edges frayed, their spines marked with fading gold letters. You pull one free, the weight of it settling into your hands, and when you open it the paper inside crackles softly, fragile as autumn leaves. The headlines speak of a different world: gas prices, local fairs, school football games. But then, buried among the trivial, you find it, a small article dated September 1973, a week before the capsule was buried. A gift to the future. It reads. The words are cheerful, talking about the excitement of the students, the items they plan to place inside. But near the end, one sentence catches your eye. One student has promised to place a letter meant not for himself, but for the town, a message he claims will be impossible to ignore. Your chest tightens as you read. They wrote about you, even if not by name. Your letter wasn't invisible, wasn't hidden. It was noticed. It was seen. And if it was seen, it could be feared. You turn the page quickly, searching for more, but the article continues only with bland descriptions of the ceremony, the mayor smiling for photographs, the sheriff keeping watch as though the moment required protection. Nothing more about the letter. Nothing more about what you remember writing in those late summer nights, when honesty poured from your pen like confession. The sound of footsteps pulls you from the page. You glance up to see the old teacher from the night before, his frame hunched, his eyes shadowed. He moves with careful steps, as if each one costs him effort, but when he reaches you, his hand grips the table with surprising strength. You see it, don't you? He whispers. His voice is rough, like gravel. You see that they knew, even then. You nod, unable to speak. He lowers himself into the chair across from you, his gaze darting toward the doorway as though expecting someone to follow. They couldn't let it happen, he says. That letter, your father said it was dangerous. He said it named names, spoke of things people would do anything to keep buried. I thought he exaggerated, but when the box was gone. He shakes his head, words falling away like leaves in the wind. Your hands tighten around the fragile paper. You want to ask him how he knows, what else he remembers, but before you can, he leans closer, his breath carrying the scent of stale coffee. They didn't bury it in the ground, he says. They buried it in silence. And if you dig deep enough, silence can kill. The words settle heavy in the room, heavier than the dust, heavier than the silence itself. Evening falls heavy over the town, the last of the sunlight fading into the hills, and you find yourself walking down a narrow side street that smells of damp wood and faint tobacco. The teacher's words still circle in your mind. They buried it in silence, and each step feels like it carries you deeper into a silence that does not want to be disturbed. You were told to find him at the back of the old hardware store, a man who once worked alongside your father, someone who might still remember what others pretend to forget. The store itself is shuttered now, its windows dusted with years of neglect, but the back door creaks open at your knock, and a low voice calls you inside. The room is dim, lit only by a single lamp on a scarred wooden table. Tools hang rusted on the walls, and the air is thick with the smell of old oil and stale smoke. An older man sits hunched in a chair, his broad shoulders stooped, his hands folded over a cane. His eyes, though clouded with age, meet yours with a sharpness that makes you pause. You're his boy, he says, his voice rough but steady. I'd know it anywhere. Same eyes. Same fire. You nod, the weight of recognition pressing against your chest. He gestures for you to sit, and the chair creaks beneath you as you lean forward. Your father, he wasn't afraid to write what no one else dared to say. The man continues. He told me he was putting that letter in the capsule, said the town needed to remember someday, when it was ready. But readiness is a dangerous thing. Those in power don't wait for it, they bury it before it can grow. Your pulse quickens. So they took it? You ask quietly. The man exhales, the sound more like a sigh than a breath. They couldn't risk it. Not with the names he wrote. Not with the money that was moving through this town. The mayor's land deals, the sheriff's protection, your father saw too much. He thought if he couldn't fight them now, time would do it for him. You clench your hands together, the memory of your father sharper now, heavier. Why didn't anyone speak up? You ask. Why didn't someone stop them? His gaze drops to the floor. Because silence is safer. Because people here learned that standing against them meant losing more than you could bear. Jobs, homes, sometimes lives. And so we stayed quiet. Too quiet. The lamp flickers, casting his face into lines of shadow, and for a moment it looks like he is fading into the very darkness he warns against. Then he leans closer, his voice lowering to a whisper. There's more in this town than just your father's letter. There are ledgers, papers, things that prove what he wrote. I can't show you here, not now. But if you're serious, if you really want to dig, you'll need to go deeper than the ground they covered. You'll need to open doors they locked years ago. You lean forward, every word carving itself into your memory. Where? His eyes meet yours, a flicker of fear in them now. The basement of the old school. That's where it started. That's where they moved it. And if you're brave enough, that's where you'll find what's left. Before you can press him for more, a sound breaks the silence. Footsteps outside the back door, slow and deliberate. The man's face pales, and he raises a trembling hand. Go, he whispers sharply. Don't be seen here. Not tonight. The footsteps pause, the door rattles once, and the lamp flickers again as if even the light is afraid. You slip out through a side exit, the alley swallowing you whole, your heart pounding with the knowledge that the silence of this town is no longer passive. It is watching you, moving against you, one step at a time. Night spreads over the town like ink spilled across a page, thick and steady, sinking into every corner until even the street lamps seem reluctant to shine. The main roads are deserted, the storefronts locked and shuttered, and the only sounds are the distant hum of insects and the occasional bark of a dog echoing through the stillness. You walk slowly, your footsteps muted on the cracked pavement, each one measured, as though the town itself might be listening. The buildings you pass seem familiar and foreign at once. The grocery store still stands, its sign faded, the paint peeling like old wallpaper. The post office, with its single flagpole, leans slightly now, the metal squeaking in the faint night breeze. And then there's the diner, its neon sign flickering weakly, casting a pale red glow across empty parking spaces. For a moment you stop, watching the sign blink, and you remember sitting inside as a teenager, nursing a soda you couldn't afford while pretending not to notice the sheriff and the mayor laughing together at a booth in the corner. Even then, you knew the sound of their laughter was sharper than it should have been. You force yourself onward, past the darkened gas station, past the small houses lying neatly side by side, their windows glowing faintly, curtains drawn tight. Behind those curtains, you imagine families gathered in silence, televisions flickering in the background, conversations careful and measured. No one in this town stays out at night without reason. And tonight you are the only one walking toward the school. The building rises at the edge of town, its silhouette black against the pale stretch of moonlit sky. In daylight, it might still resemble a place of learning, but at night it looks more like a monument to something forgotten. The brick walls are cracked, vines crawling upward as if nature itself has begun reclaiming it. The windows stare blankly, some cracked, some dark, and the front doors are chained shut, a sign nailed across them, condemned, do not enter. You circle to the side entrance, the one the old man described, where a single light bulb swings above the doorway. The bulb flickers erratically, each flash of light revealing chipped paint and rust-stained hinges, each moment of darkness pressing closer around you. When you push the door, it groans loudly, protesting, as though the building resents your intrusion. Inside, the air is cooler, thicker, laced with the scent of chalk dust and mildew. Your footsteps echo along the linoleum floor, the sound sharp and out of place in the silence. You move down the corridor, past classrooms you once knew. A glimpse through a broken window and one door shows rows of desks, some overturned, others still neatly aligned as though students might walk in tomorrow. On the blackboard, faint chalk marks remain, fragments of arithmetic problems, a half-written sentence, a date from years long past. The sight sends a shiver down your spine. You remember sitting in those desks, listening to the drone of lessons while your mind wandered elsewhere, wondering if this town could ever change. You remember, too, the day of the burial, the weight of the letter in your hands, the way your chest tightened as you sealed it inside the capsule. And now, here you are, chasing its ghost through empty hallways. The stairwell to the basement is at the end of the hall, the door stiff but unlocked. The stairs creak beneath your weight, each step a complaint, and the deeper you go, the heavier the air becomes. It smells of damp stone, of rusting pipes, of wood that has absorbed too much water over too many years. A single bulb dangles from a frayed wire above the landing, its glow dim and yellow, barely strong enough to push back the shadows. You pause at the bottom, letting your eyes adjust. The basement stretches before you in a series of low corridors, lined with storage rooms, their doors heavy with rusted locks. The walls are stained with watermarks, and somewhere in the distance you hear the faint drip of water, steady, patient. The closet is just where the man said it would be, a narrow door, the lock old and brittle. You tug at it, and with one sharp twist the rust gives way, the snap of metal ringing through the corridor like a gunshot. You freeze, holding your breath, waiting for footsteps, for voices, for anything. But there is only silence, thick and unbroken. Inside, the closet is small, the shelves cluttered with forgotten things, broken chalkboards stacked against the wall, boxes of textbooks swollen with water damage, papers curled and yellow. Dust blankets everything, thick enough that your fingers leave trails when you brush against it. You crouch, scanning the lowest shelf, and that's when you see it, a rectangular outline in the dust, a space where something once rested for years. The wood beneath is cleaner, less faded, marked with the ghost of an object long removed. Your pulse quickens. This is it. This is where they hid it. You kneel, running your hand across the floor, and there it is again, faint drag marks, streaks in the dust leading away from the shelf toward the back wall. You follow them with your eyes, heart hammering, until you notice something odd, a panel in the wall, a square of wood slightly off color from the rest, as if replaced or covered long after the wall was built. You press your palm against it. It shifts. Your breath catches. You press harder, and the panel slides inward with a soft scrape, revealing a narrow cavity beyond. The air that escapes smells of old paper and stone, untouched for years. Inside rests a bundle of documents tied with twine, the edges brittle, the ink faded but still visible in places. Your hands tremble as you reach in and pull them out. The bundle is heavier than it looks, and as you hold it, you imagine the weight is not just paper but truth itself, heavy with the years it has been denied. You untie the twine, the knot stiff with age, and unfold the first sheet. The handwriting leaps at you, bold strokes, names scrawled across the page, numbers that look like amounts, lists of land deeds, transactions. Some of the names you recognize immediately, the mayor, the sheriff. Even others you had forgotten, men who once stood tall in town meetings, their reputations polished like brass. Your vision blurs for a moment, your breath shallow. These are the things your father must have written about, the proof he believed would one day be undeniable. But before you can turn the next page, the silence breaks. From the top of the basement stairs comes the faint creak of hinges, followed by the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps. One step. Then another. You freeze, the paper still in your hands, your heart pounding so loud you are sure it can be heard. The footsteps descend slowly, steady as a drumbeat, echoing against the walls, growing closer with each second. The bulb above flickers, shadows stretching across the room, and for the first time you feel the basement itself press in around you, as if the building has been waiting for this moment, waiting for the silence to claim you too. The footsteps echo down the stairwell, slow and deliberate, each creak of the wood sharper than the last. You clutch the bundle of papers in your hands, the rough twine scraping your palms as though reminding you of the choice you must make, to hold on, or to hide. The bulb above flickers once, twice, then steadies, its pale yellow glow pooling weakly over the floor, leaving the corners in heavy shadow. You press yourself closer to the shelf, your breath caught in your throat, straining to hear beyond the pounding of your own heartbeat. Another step. Then another. Whoever it is, they are not rushing. They are descending with the kind of patience that carries confidence, the kind that belongs to someone who believes they already own whatever waits below. You glance at the open bundle, pages splayed across your lap. Words leap at you from the faded ink: land purchase, deed transfer, some paid in cash. Next to each line is a name. Some are familiar, etched in your memory from years of town meetings and whispered conversations at the diner. Others are strangers, outsiders perhaps, but all linked together in patterns that spread like cracks across stone. You flip another page, desperate for more before the footsteps reach you. The writing here is shakier, the ink blotched as if the hand that wrote it trembled. At the top, underlined twice, is a single word: capsule. Below it, a note scrawled in hurried strokes. Not safe. They know. Sheriff moved it tonight. Your stomach knots. This isn't just your father's words. These are notes someone else added later, long after the capsule should have been untouched. Someone else knew. Someone else was keeping track. The footsteps are closer now, the sound of leather against wood, the groan of each step carrying through the air. You shove the bundle back into its cavity, your fingers fumbling with the panel until it clicks softly shut. Then you press yourself into the narrowest strip of shadow between the shelf and the wall, your body rigid, your breath shallow. The basement door opens fully, and the light from the stairwell spills down in a thin, sickly strip. A silhouette pauses at the threshold, tall, broad-shouldered, the outline unmistakable even in the dim glow. The sheriff. He lingers there, as though listening, and in that silence you realize how much the building itself betrays you: the creak of your breath, the thud of your heartbeat, the faint scrape of dust when your shoe shifts a fraction against the floor. The sheriff takes another step, then another, moving into the room with the certainty of someone who has walked these halls countless times. He shines a flashlight across the shelves, the beams slicing through dust motes that spin like frightened insects. It passes over the closet, over the broken chalkboards, over the scattered boxes. Each time the light nears your hiding place, you feel the air squeeze tighter, your muscles tense until they ache. Then the beam lingers. It hangs on the panel you shifted, the faintest outline still visible where the wood does not quite match. The sheriff tilts his head, steps closer, the beam narrowing on that single imperfect square. Your throat tightens. If he pulls it open, he will see the bundle. He will know someone has been here. He will know it was you. The silence stretches until it feels unbearable. Then, at the last moment, a sound breaks it, the faint crash of glass upstairs, followed by the echo of voices, laughter carried on the night air. Teenagers. Curious enough to break into the condemned building for their own thrill. The sheriff curses under his breath, the flashlight jerking upward. He turns, his boots striking hard against the floor as he storms back toward the stairs, muttering about trespassers, his heavy steps fading as he climbs. You remain frozen in the shadows, lungs burning from holding your breath. Only when the door slams shut above do you finally let the air out, your body sagging against the wall. Carefully, you pry the panel open again, your hands shaking, and retrieve the bundle. This time you tuck it beneath your jacket, the edges of the papers scratching against your ribs. You know now that you cannot leave them here. The sheriff already suspects, and the building itself no longer feels safe. These words, your father's words, and whoever else added to them, need to be read somewhere beyond the reach of this town's silence. You make your way back through the basement, the bulbs swaying gently overhead, casting long, swinging shadows across the walls. Each step feels louder than the last, each corner sharper, each echo more accusing. At the stairs, you pause, listening. The sheriff's voice drifts faintly from above, harsh and commanding, barking at the teenagers who stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. Their laughter has turned uneasy now, a nervous chatter that barely masks their fear. You slip through another corridor instead, a narrow path that leads to the old boiler room. A rusted door at the back opens into the night, hinges screaming in protest, but the sound is swallowed quickly by the cicadas. Outside, the air feels fresher, though heavy with the weight of what you carry. The bundle presses against your ribs like a second heartbeat, and as you walk away from the school, you know two truths with painful clarity. 1. The sheriff was here before, and he knows exactly what was hidden in those walls. 2. By taking it with you, you've crossed the line from witness to target. The silence of the town no longer watches. Now it hunts. Morning in the town arrives too brightly, the sun glaring off the windows, the streets buzzing with a life that feels staged, rehearsed, as though everyone woke knowing what part they must play. You step out onto Main Street with the bundle of papers hidden beneath your jacket, and the air feels heavier than it should, each breath dragging like smoke. At first, you think it's only your nerves, but then you notice the way people look at you. Not directly, never directly. Instead, their eyes brush over you quickly, then away, as if acknowledging you for too long might pull them into something they don't want. On the porch of the diner, two men lower their voices when you pass. At the gas station, a boy who once played baseball with you fumbles his greeting, then mutters something about needing to leave. Even the librarian, who usually smiled with quiet warmth, avoids your gaze when you step past her window. It is as if the entire town has agreed on a single script: don't ask, don't answer, don't remember. You carry the bundle tighter under your arm, its weight like a brand. Every step reminds you of what you took from the basement, of the pages filled with names and numbers, of the scrawled note that confirmed what you feared. The capsule was moved, hidden, stolen not by accident but by deliberate hands. The sheriff's car idles at the corner, the engine low and steady. He leans against the driver's door, arms folded, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting the morning light. He doesn't move as you pass, doesn't speak, but his presence is louder than any words. You know he saw you in the basement. You know he understands what you've done. Your chest tightens as you keep walking, forcing yourself not to look back. Later, in the diner, you slide into a booth at the back, the vinyl seat cracked and patched with tape. The waitress, someone you vaguely remember from high school, pours your coffee with a polite smile that doesn't reach her eyes. She lingers just long enough to whisper, "Be careful," before hurrying away, her shoulders stiff, her face turned deliberately toward another table. You sip the coffee, the bitterness clinging to your tongue, and pull one of the pages from the bundle beneath the table, shielding it from view. The handwriting is clear despite the years, listing land transfers in neat columns. Each transfer is marked with initials M, H, J, R, S, C. You whisper the names in your head, piecing them together, recognizing families that still live here, families that hold the town in their grip. The bell above the diner door jingles, and you glance up to see the mayor step inside, his polished shoes tapping against the floor. His smile is broad, his voice booming as he greets patrons, but when his eyes sweep the room and fall on you, the smile flickers. Only for an instant. But you see it. He doesn't approach you. He doesn't need to. His presence is enough, filling the diner with the same kind of silence you felt in the gymnasium, silence that isn't absence of sound but rather a command: do not speak. Do not remember. You slide the paper back into your jacket and finish your coffee quickly, the taste sour now, tainted by the weight of eyes on you. Outside, the town feels smaller, as if the streets themselves have narrowed. Every corner holds a watcher, every window a set of eyes. Even the church bell, which usually chimes to mark the hour, remains silent today, its tower looming like a sentinel. You walk faster, the papers pressing against your ribs, your mind racing with what to do next. You know you cannot keep them here. Not in this town. Not where silence is stronger than truth. But before you can decide, a voice calls your name. You turn sharply, and there, standing in the shade of the courthouse steps, is the old teacher, his face pale, his eyes filled with urgency. He raises a trembling hand, beckoning you closer. And as you step toward him, you see it. Tucked under his arm is something wrapped in brown paper, something that looks too carefully guarded to be anything ordinary. The courthouse steps rise above you, their stone worn smooth by years of footsteps, each one a reminder of the judgments and decisions that have shaped this town. The old teacher waits there, half in shadow, his frame bent but his presence undeniable. His hand trembles slightly as he adjusts the brown paper parcel under his arm, and when you approach, his eyes lock onto yours with an intensity that makes you slow your stride. "You came," he murmurs, his voice raspy as though it has been dragged across gravel. "I wasn't sure you would. Not after last night." You nod, your pulse steady but heavy, the weight of the bundle under your jacket pressing against your ribs like a hidden heartbeat. "I found it," you whisper. "In the basement." The papers, they were there. A flicker passes over his face, relief, but also fear. He glances over his shoulder at the street, where people pass without pausing, though you feel their eyes brushing against you in that careful way, the way this town has mastered, a glance without acknowledgement, curiosity masked as indifference. "Not here," he says quickly, his hand tightening around the parcel. "Too many ears, too many eyes. Walk with me." You follow him down a narrow side street, away from the courthouse, the sun casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. The buildings lean in on either side, their windows dusty, curtains drawn, as if they too are listening. The teacher moves slowly, but his steps are purposeful, each one carrying the weight of urgency. He leads you to a small park on the edge of town, where rusted swings creak in the breeze and the grass grows wild around the benches. He sits heavily on one of them, gesturing for you to join him. You do, the wood of the bench groaning under your combined weight. For a long moment he says nothing, only stares at the parcel in his lap, his fingers running over the rough paper as though he can feel the secrets it holds. Finally, he exhales. "Your father wasn't the only one who tried," he begins, his voice low but steady. "He wasn't the only one who thought the truth would survive if we buried it deep enough. But the ground here, it doesn't keep secrets safe. It swallows them. It devours them." You lean closer. "What's in there?" He hesitates, his eyes searching yours as if weighing whether you can bear the burden he has carried for decades. Then, slowly, he unties the string and peels back the paper. Inside are ledgers, thick, leather-bound books, their pages yellowed, edges frayed. He opens one, and you see rows of numbers, dates, signatures. Payments recorded meticulously, amounts far larger than anything this small town should have seen. Names beside them, initials at first, then full signatures, the mayor, the sheriff, businessmen whose families still walk proudly through these streets. "They thought no one noticed," the teacher says, his hands shaking slightly as he turns the pages. "But I did. I kept these records, copies of every transaction I could find, every whisper that left a paper trail. I thought, foolishly, that one day the capsule would surface, that your father's letter would force the town to face itself. And when it did, these records would be the proof." You stare at the ink, the neat lines that document years of corruption, the quiet theft of land, the siphoning of money meant for schools, for roads, for families. And then you realize, this is bigger than your father's letter. The capsule was just the spark. These books are the fire. Why didn't you show them before? You ask. His eyes glisten, his voice heavy with regret. Because I was afraid. Because I saw what happened to those who tried. One man lost his farm overnight. Another store burned down while the sheriff watched. And your father. His voice falters, the sentence unfinished, the weight of memory too heavy. You swallow hard, anger tightening your chest. So you hid it. I preserved it. He corrects softly, waiting for someone who would be brave enough to carry it further than I could. His gaze fixes on you, sharp despite his years. Maybe that someone is you. The words settle between you like a vow, heavier than the ledgers themselves. Before you can respond, the sound of footsteps cuts through the stillness. Heavy, deliberate, too close. You both turn sharply to see a figure standing at the edge of the park. The sheriff. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His presence alone carries the weight of a threat, the same way it did in the basement. His sunglasses reflect the fading light, his jaw set, his posture calm but unyielding. The teacher stiffens, his hand tightening around the ledgers. "We have to move," he whispers urgently. But before either of you can rise, the sheriff takes a step forward, and with that step the air itself seems to shift, heavy with the knowledge that silence has found you again, and this time it will not let go so easily. The days after the park blur together in your memory, a haze of shadows, half-heard conversations, and the weight of papers you carry pressed against your chest like contraband. You don't remember exactly how you got the ledgers out of the teacher's trembling hands, or how you slipped away while the sheriff's gaze burned across the grass, but you do remember the feel of the pages, brittle and sharp, like holding the bones of the town itself. You spend nights in the small room you've rented above the old barber shop, the air thick with dust and the faint smell of hair tonic. You spread the ledgers across the bed, their spines cracked, their ink fading but legible, and you read until your eyes blur. Land transfers, dates, payments, all the pieces of a puzzle that reveal a truth so vast it makes your chest ache. Farms bought for pennies on the dollar, families forced out overnight, funds meant for the schools siphoned into private accounts. And always the same initials, the mayor's, the sheriff's, their allies. A circle of power so tight it strangles. You think of your father's letter, buried in that capsule, the words of a 17-year-old boy who believed time would protect the truth. And now, 20 years later, you realize that the letter was only the match. The ledgers are the fire. You copy as much as you can by hand, your fingers aching from writing, then package the rest carefully, sealing them in a manila envelope. The next morning, before the sun is fully risen, you walk to the post office. The clerk greets you with the same polite indifference as always, but you see the flicker of recognition in her eyes, the way her gaze lingers just a moment too long on the envelope. You hand it over anyway, your voice steady as you say, "Express. To the state paper in Springfield." The package leaves your hands, and for the first time in days you feel lighter. But not safe. Never safe. 2 days later, the whispers begin. It starts in the diner, where a copy of the newspaper lies folded on the counter, the headline stark and heavy. Small town corruption, a legacy of silence. Beneath it, paragraphs drawn directly from the ledgers, names, dates, amounts, accusations laid bare in print for anyone to see. Patrons read quietly, their forks pausing halfway to their mouths, their eyes darting toward one another. No one speaks at first, but silence has its own language, and in that silence something shifts. By afternoon, copies of the paper spread like wildfire. At the gas station, men huddle near the pumps, their voices low but urgent. At the grocery store, women whisper in the aisles, clutching the paper in their hands as though it might burn them. Even the church, usually a sanctuary of routine, feels different that Sunday, the pastor's sermon halting, his eyes flicking nervously toward the pews where the mayor's family sits stiff and silent. You walk the streets quietly, listening. The whispers are everywhere now, seeping into every crack, every corner. They say the sheriff was paid off for years. My father lost his farm in '79. Do you think? I always wondered how the mayor afforded that new house. The words tumble through the air like falling leaves, fragile but unstoppable. And with each one, the silence that once held this town together begins to fracture. But with the whispers comes something else, eyes. Watching you. Not the polite avoidance from before, but sharp, probing glances. Some filled with gratitude, others with suspicion, others still with fear. One night, as you leave the diner, you find a note slipped under your door. The paper is plain, the handwriting hurried. Stop. Before you end up like your father. Your chest tightens as you read it in the dim light. The past is no longer just memory. It is reaching into the present, clawing, warning. And yet, despite the threat, you feel something shift inside you, not fear, but resolve. Because now the town cannot pretend it doesn't know. The silence is broken, and no matter how hard they try, they will not be able to stitch it shut again. You return to your rented room and spread the papers out once more. Your hands trace the ink, the names, the numbers. Somewhere in these pages lies the final piece, the proof that will not just shake the town but topple those who held it in their grip for decades. The whispers have begun. Now you must decide whether to let them fade into rumor or to turn them into a roar that will leave no room for denial. And as you sit in the quiet room, the envelope torn open, the ledgers laid bare, you hear it, a faint sound outside the window. Not the hum of cicadas, not the rustle of leaves, but footsteps. Slow. Careful. Close. The footsteps outside your window linger longer than they should, pacing in the gravel alleyway, pausing just beneath the glow of the street lamp. You sit motionless in the dark, your breath shallow, your hand resting on the bundle of ledgers spread across the bed like a map of betrayal. The floorboards creak faintly as you shift, and you freeze, every sense tuned to the presence outside. Then, silence. When you finally gather the courage to move to the window, the street below is empty, the lamp buzzing faintly, moths spinning circles in its weak light. Whoever was there is gone, but the message is clear: you are no longer simply an observer. You are the disruption. The fracture. The reason their silence can no longer hold. The following morning, the town hums with a tension you can taste in the air. At the grocery store, conversations break mid-sentence when you step inside. At the gas station, eyes linger on you just long enough to wound. Even children, who don't yet understand, glance at you with the unease they've absorbed from their parents. But it is the newspaper stand outside the post office that tells you the tide has turned. Bold black letters stretch across the front page. Corruption exposed. Mayor and sheriff under state investigation. A photograph shows the courthouse, doors flung open, officials stepping in, clipboards in hand. The article mentions undisclosed financial records, misuse of funds, land fraud. Phrases that sound clinical, but you know the weight behind them. They are the words that mean farms lost, families broken, livelihoods crushed. You buy a copy, though you barely need to. Everyone else is holding one too. They stand in clumps on the sidewalks, pointing to names, whispering stories. A woman outside the bakery tells anyone who will listen that her father's land was stolen for pennies in 1977. A man at the barber's shop mutters that his brother warned of such deals, but no one believed him then. The silence that bound this town for decades is unraveling thread by thread, and in its place rises something louder, something raw. You walk past the sheriff's office. The blinds are drawn, but you can feel the presence inside, the weight of someone trapped, someone used to ruling through fear, now watching it slip like sand through his fingers. A small crowd lingers across the street, waiting, muttering, not brave enough yet to confront him directly but no longer afraid to stand near. Later that day, the courthouse steps swarm with reporters. Their voices overlap, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. The mayor stands stiff, his smile brittle, words stumbling as he insists it is all misunderstanding, an attack on the good name of the town. Beside him, the sheriff looms, arms folded, jaw set, his silence no longer strength but surrender. You watch from the edge of the crowd. For years these two men controlled the air itself, one with polished speeches, the other with silent threats. And now, their voices sound thin, their presence diminished by the weight of their own secrets exposed. Someone in the crowd shouts, "What about the farms? What about the families you ruined?" Another, "Where did the school money go?" The questions fly like stones, and though no answers come, the silence that follows is different this time. It is no longer obedient. It is accusatory. That evening, the teacher does not appear at the park. You wait on the bench until the streetlights hum alive, the air cooling around you, the sound of cicadas louder than your own heartbeat. Finally you rise, dread curling in your stomach. You find out the next morning, he's gone. They say it was his heart, that it simply gave out. You hear the words, but you know better. You've seen too much silence to believe in coincidence. His death is folded neatly into the town's habit of forgetting, a final act of erasure. And yet, in the quiet mourning of those who dare to whisper his name, you see that even his silence cannot be total. A woman at the library leaves flowers on the steps. A group of former students bow their heads as they pass the park. Small gestures, but gestures all the same. The days blur into hearings, articles, late-night broadcasts. The mayor resigns in disgrace, his family retreating behind closed shutters. The sheriff is suspended, his badge stripped, his voice no longer carrying the weight it once did. Properties are seized, records audited, and the town, your town, finds itself forced to confront what it tried so long to bury. You do not attend the hearings. You do not need to. You've already heard all you needed in the rustle of paper, in the trembling voice of the teacher, in the memory of your father's words sealed in that capsule. The town itself is the jury now, and the verdict is written not in ink but in whispers turned to roars. One evening, near the end of August, you walk to the school grounds alone. The grass has grown uneven, the rope that once marked the capsule's resting place is gone, and only a patch of dirt remains, smoothed by time and footsteps. You stand there quietly, the air thick with the sound of cicadas, the sky bleeding into twilight. You close your eyes, and for a moment you see it again, yourself at 17, lowering that folded letter into the chest, watching the dirt cover it, believing that someday the truth would rise. You remember the fear, the hope, the weight of words too heavy for a boy your age. And then you whisper, "It's done!" Because it is. The capsule was never opened the way it was meant to be, but the truth it carried survived anyway. It survived in you, in the papers you risked everything to uncover, in the voices that no longer agreed to silence. The mayor has fallen. The sheriff is disgraced. The town itself has begun to breathe differently, slower, freer, though still marked by scars. You turn away, your shadow stretching long across the empty lawn, and you know that your revenge has never been about punishment. It has been about memory. About giving back the voice they tried to bury. And as the first stars pierce the sky, you realize that the inheritance your father left you was never land, never money, never property. It was this, the quiet strength to carry a truth others tried to kill. And that truth, once unearthed, can never be buried again.